out the rest of the round. First of all, how are you and how was your weekend?
I'm well, thanks, mate. Yeah, weekend was good. There was some good footy. Our game wasn't one of them, I thought, but we'll get around to that. How are you, anyway?
Yeah, good. I think having the Warriors disappoint us on a Sunday at least gives you some of the weekend to enjoy. So
Yep.
yeah, we've got a couple of weeks of that with the Warriors getting 3 games on Sunday back to back. So hopefully some enjoyable weekends coming up. But while we're here live on Wednesdays at 8 p.m., you can also catch our show at your convenience on iHeartRadio and Spotify. Just remember to search for New Zealand Sport Radio. As always, we're going to cover everything you need to know in the week that was rugby league, including our top stories of the week, a review of the round 9 matches. We'll then stop and answer some questions from you guys as well as some questions we've got for each other. We'll then preview round 10 and discuss who we're picking before ending the night with a quick recap of Super League. So remember to send us comments and questions throughout the show, and we may as well jump straight into the news, Richie.
Sure.
First one I thought was quite interesting. The NRL fined Gus Gould $20,000 for his comments on Channel 9 for calling the game stupid. He's confirmed that he's going to fight the fine. Before I go into it, what are your thoughts on what he said and the punishment?
Um, what he said, I find hard to disagree with. uh, Saying what plenty of people are feeling. Um, the punishment, yeah, I think it's more because he's tied in with a club, isn't he? In an official role with the doggies. Hence why he's the NRL are able to slap him with that fine. But yeah, well, it's quite heavy handed, isn't it? They're trying to make a statement there, the NRL.
They are. They're kind of been coming out. We'll talk about it a bit later. They're coming out at everyone at the moment, trying to defend the NRL. I actually agreed 100% with his comments. When I listened to
Yeah,
him, I was like, "Oh, he might get in trouble due to the fact of his role, which we've discussed when he took that role on at the Bulldogs. There's a little bit of murkiness around it due to his other media-related jobs,
yeah,
and how much can you get away with saying when you are in charge of a team? We're seeing it here. I expect he'll still end up paying a fine, but it'll be a lot less. I think they also said it was going to be like basically halved anyway. But I don't know. I agree with him calling out the game because you got to, as big as the NRL is, they're still got to be accountable for things that are happening. And it's been a tough couple of weeks with some shocking calls, the rule changes, and how it's affecting the entertainment value and the performance of the game. So,
mm.
I
Did you did you have the quote there for context? Paul may not have heard it.
I don't have the quote there
Oh, that's all right.
because I listened on thing. He was just saying it was stupid. It's a stupid game,
Yeah,
which
yeah,
Paul is. He may not have heard Gus Gould to hear it, but he hears it from me every time I jump on before the show. So yeah, and Jacko said it was 10K with 10K reserved for 2 years on a good boy bond. Yeah. Um, so, and it's not the worst thing he said since he's taken over the Bulldogs job. So it's interesting
I
to
didn't.
pick this one.
Yeah, I didn't think so either. But yeah, I like I said, I didn't disagree with anything he said. He's probably said things we've discussed already, and yeah, I agree.
Yeah.
And when he's going into the disruptor rule and things like that, that's we've even spoken about how stupid that is.
Yeah. But yeah, we'll see what it is. I just thought it would be a nice one to kick off with. And speaking of kickoffs, we'll segue into our discussion on kickoffs last week about everyone saying should they ban them, should they not. Peter Vlandis has actually come out and said they have no plans to ban the kickoff at this stage, which potentially the negative man in me says potentially that means next year or the year after he's going to do it, but right now he's not. But yeah, so we can put that on the back burner for now. But what's your take on his stance there?
I'd just like him to um, just
Stop
don't ban
changing
the
things.
kickoff. Yeah, he said no plans to ban the kickoff at this stage. Don't say at this stage, just don't ban the kickoff.
Yeah. And yeah, Jacko said he saw the whole clip of what Gould said, and most of it was in humour. NRL getting very prickly about any criticism. Yeah, it was very tongue in cheek. It wasn't like you could tell like he wasn't happy with the calls, but he was just kind of being old man yelling at the sky. And yeah, they've taken offence to it. And I see Bjorn said what points were the stupid parts. It was a lot around the Api Carousel disallowed try. I think that's what kind of got him up. That was where it kind of went, and he was like, it was just stupid. But yeah, it is what it is. And the big news, I guess.
So what he said was, our game is so stupid. You can lose the ball over the line, and it costs you 20 meters and 7 tackles. Why? I don't know, because it's stupid. But I could just take a line drop out, and it goes out on the full, no consequence. It's nothing at all. That's what sort of stupid game is this? Who sits and makes up these rules? So he went. Yeah. He doubled down a few times.
Yeah, but it is true. Like, yeah, you can get penalised for losing the ball over the line, but if you do a repeat set and you kick it out on the full, what used to be a penalty is now nothing, basically, which was a thing we all criticised when they announced that this year. But yeah, we'll move on to David Fifita watch, mate. So there's been a lot of noise about David Fifita this week. He apparently has gone to Sydney to meet with the Panthers about potentially joining them from 2025. And they've apparently put an offer on the table. Ivan Cleary refused to comment, which when he refuses to comment, it usually means that it's true. And then we've actually heard the Dragons are interested and offered more money. And the Roosters apparently throw in an offer his way too. And I think Buzz said that there was like another 2 Sydney clubs, which we're kind of running out of them at the moment there, have put offers down. So I assume the Bulldogs would definitely be one. They're always looking for a forward.
Yeah.
And I don't know, maybe the Eels. But the Eels have got it's hard. The Eels have got some good second rowers in that, but it's a David Fifita.
Did you say Dragons? I heard Dragons are showing interest too.
I did say Dragons. Okay. Yeah. But yeah, what's your take? Where do you see him going?
I'd love him to stay put. Where I don't want him going is Panthers or Roosters.
Yeah.
The worst possible scenario is worst possible scenario is Panthers or Roosters, because imagine Fifita at the Panthers running off Cleary. Doesn't sound very fair, but it is what it is. You know, if he wants to go somewhere to win titles, enhance his legacy, there's a good place to start. But yeah, I'd love him to stay put and try and build something there with his mate Tino. And yeah, imagine that club if they lose Fifita there.
Yeah, it'll suck if that for the Titans, but yeah, he wants to win a premiership, so it's Panthers number 1 for that, or the Roosters. The Roosters have potential, and they're both teams that have money now with Fisher Harris and Hargraves both leaving. But, so they've got the room. Not that the Roosters ever struggle. And I see Ruse here, and he said Uncle Ivan's upset about the teams nicking his players. Yeah, we got that coming up soon, so we'll discuss that there. But yeah, we'll just have to keep an eye out on the Titans and Fifita situation. Hopefully have more news next week. So we'll move into one that probably will go a bit long with us discussing it. But Graham Ellerslie has come out, and Andrew Abdel did as well, actually. They came out to call for fans to show more respect towards referees, saying they're highly capable elite performers that make complex decisions in real time under fatigue. Adding on to that, he also spoke out about the Warriors not getting a penalty try, saying, and I've got the quote here, "It's not an automatic try. Clearly the bunker thought there was too much doubt. 2 players contesting the ball, and the match official couldn't be sure that he falls to the ground with the ball coming out. That was solely due to the tackle." That's, excuse my French, I know Paul doesn't like us swearing, but it's the biggest crock of shit I've heard in terms of that. I get what he means about some of the lack of respect fans are showing refs, but we've said it a lot. If you're critical of a player for playing bad, you've got to be critical of a ref for performing bad as well. And this weekend itself was full of a lot of poor performances from officials. Probably more towards the bunker. I would throw my venom if it was me. I feel like a lot of the bunker calls were incorrect this week, where they have no excuse, in my opinion. You shouldn't get a bunker call wrong. And if you were watching and listening to the commentators on several games when they're listening to what the bunker man's saying and just immediately disagreeing, it's a problem. And yeah, Jacko said, before I go on about the penalty try, I kind of agree with Jacko. He said, if it's not a penalty try, the guy should have had 10 in the bin. Yeah, I was fine with it not being a penalty try, but there should have been a sim bin. He didn't compete for the ball, despite what Ellensley said. He tackled a player in the air and he tipped him as well. So you've got a tackle in the air, tip in the air. Doing it in a try-scoring situation is a professional foul, which is usually a sim bin as well. So he could have got sim binned for the same thing in two different ways, and he didn't.
I can think of three right off the top of my head when you were talking about bunker. Two in our game, the penalty try or lack thereof. The
strip in the Titans.
The strip in the Titans right at the end, that was absolutely ridiculous. He's just making a tackle and accidentally the balls come out. Never a stripping motion. There's another one. I thought Dallon's try in the corner was absolutely a try. Jackson Hastings has pretty much tackled a decoy player, made a choice to, was never ever committing to the corner, would never have got there. That's three. And then you look at the Bulldogs Tigers game where they had at least 4 or 5 successful player or captain's challenges just because the calls were blatantly that bad.
Yeah.
We had Jackson Ford being put on report for making a tackle pretty much. Yeah. I get that they are under fatigue and making complex decisions. He said they're elite performers. Sometimes they don't look like elite performers.
There's not a lot of them that I would call elite, to be fair.
No.
I'm not Butler, who was the official for the Warriors. I'm not his biggest fan. And Badger, I feel like she's kind of being the scapegoat at the moment because she was poor in her game. The bunker didn't help her as well. And they're using the fact that she's a woman. A lot of people are throwing in the way. Man or woman, I don't care. If you are a ref and you do a bad job, you do a bad job. She had a shocker, but they haven't stood her down. She's in fact reffing us this week. I don't know. I don't know what to say.
As far as the as how one goes, look, the way that players treat her, I think there's been a comment that look, other players also treat all rookie referees like that and find out where the line is. That's fine.
Yeah.
Understand, but which is totally separate to the abuse she gets on social media, which is out of order, that's sexist based. Criticism, fine. Try pushing her just like you pushed any other referee, not physically, but kind of ask her questions, etc. Just like any other referee, fine. And I think she'd want to be treated in the exact same way as other referees by the players and by the coaches, absolutely. But the stuff that she has to put up with on social media, that's out of order and wrong. There are two separate things.
Yeah, there's I'm all for being critical when it's due. But yeah, you got to be tact with how you do it. You don't just have she was a rubbish ref because she's a woman. No, she was a rubbish ref because she did a poor job. Same as and there were worse refs out there this week than her too, to be fair. But we'll move on from that. It was a bad week, and Graham Ellerslie defended everything. Basically, said everything was. He said there was a few wrong. Aiden Caesar, he said should have been a sin bin, which was there. But yeah, we've talked about it a lot. The personal attacks that players, officials, and all that get. I don't see myself personally. I don't see the point. I don't have the time or energy to be that upset to throw personal attacks at someone. I have an hour to 3 hours, depending on how long we ramble, on a Wednesday to vent my frustrations. But I would never send a message to a player or an official and have a go at them. Yeah, I think that's silly. But you get that with some fanatics, I guess. And yeah, and Jacko said, given her calls in the bunker during our games, don't expect any 50-50 calls to go our way. Yeah, I have been really critical of her when she's been in the bunker. I feel like she looks at everything too closely. There's no grey with her in the bunker. So I don't know if we've actually had her out on the field before. So it'll be interesting.
Unlikely at the weekend. That was her third game. So she's a rookie referee. Absolutely.
Yeah, but yeah, we'll I'm sure we'll discuss it next week. So we'll move on. Michael Checker. I think Jacko talked about this last week, but Michael Checker is rumored to be interested in being the next head coach for the Rabbitohs, despite a lot of noise coming out that Wayne Bennett's already got the gig and it just hasn't been announced. The rumors are that I think it might have even been Braithen Nestor was saying he's already got a 3-year deal signed, sealed, and delivered with the Rabbits, but nothing's come out officially yet. But yeah, what's your take? Would you be interested in seeing Michael Checker coach the Rabbits?
Yeah, it'd be interesting. I know he's more known for his work in rugby union, but he's done a little bit of rugby league coaching already now as well. I think on the international stage, so it'd be interesting. I don't know whether they'd want to take a gamble on a rookie NRL guy, given the hole that they're in. I think they're looking for Uncle Wayne to come in and save the day. They pretty much haven't been great since he left. Well, they had maybe half a season where they were good, and then fell off a cliff. But I don't know that the Rabbitohs would take that punt.
Yeah, and I saw Ross has said what happened to the Walker brothers who are not being mentioned. I think they officially retired. I don't think they're coaching at all anymore. So I think that's why they're not being mentioned. But yeah, we'll see. I'm sure if Wayne has already signed on the dotted line, they don't need to announce it right away. He's busy with the Dolphins. They've got an interim coach right now. It's not like he's going to quit his job with the Dolphins and go immediately. So even if it is official, they might wait all the way to the back end of the year when their season's officially basically over. But yeah, when we get the news on whoever gets it, we'll discuss it, I'm sure. So we'll move on to, I thought this was an interesting one. I'm going to get his name wrong. Lee Hagipatalis. Is that how you say it?
Lee Hagipatalis. I got no idea, mate.
Yeah, the old CEO man of the Tigers. Yeah. He's apparently pulling his Bryden Lawyers sponsorship from the Tigers. Apparently there was a big letter he sent them abusing them due to his exit from the club. I think we discussed it last year when we talked about if they get rid of him and the board, that was always going to be a risk that he'd pull his sponsorship from them. I feel like it was a worthy gamble. I think it's $1 million a year or something they sponsor, but I feel like the Tigers, they're not performing, amazing, but they're performing better, and they seem to be a bit more of a cohesive club now, rather than the cluster it was last year and the year before when he was running around. So to me, it sounds like sour grapes after he got sacked. But what do you reckon? Do you think it's $1 million a year is a big loss?
Yeah, classic sour grapes. But given that he got the sack, you can hardly blame him. And you're right. The more the Tigers improve, and I think they probably will even more with some of the recruitment for next year. I think sponsorship will come and go. They'll pick up other sponsors to fill that void. But um, you could probably see it coming given the way he was, given his exit.
Yeah. And Paul,
What's his company called?
it's Bryden
Bryden's
Lawyers.
Oh wow,
Right.
the major partner. I mean, that's their top corporate sponsor. This is not. So it's not. This isn't a small middling sponsor. This is the top one. Unfortunately for the Tigers, is not the time to be looking for new sponsors. Right, corporates are tightening their belts and that sort of thing. So a tough time to be finding a new major partner.
What about the standoff, guys?
The
Where can we, if we pull out the wallets and empty it out, and can we do $1 million a year?
You've still got to subscribe to the Patreon, Brad.
yeah. Subscribe to the Patreon. I'll put the link in down below, and then maybe you never know.
But yeah, we'll see what happens. I think Jacko mentioned as well that the Tigers are on the right track. I think they are. I think they're heading in the right direction. As you said too, Richie, bringing in Taruva, Luai.
Luai, yeah.
Yeah, they're going to have some good players in there. If they can keep Stefano, I think it's the biggest thing they've got to try to do. Make sure that he doesn't leave. I think they're building the right platform to move forward on. Admittedly, it's not hard to improve on where they've been, but yeah, I think they're heading in the right direction, which is all you can really ask for when you've been stuck as cellar dwellers for as long as them. And yeah, Simon said, according to Dr. Hayek, a sports business lecturer in Australia, Macarthur region, where the Tigers have connections, is actually the fastest growing region in Australia. They might be good for a new sponsor. Yeah, well, we'll see. I'm sure if they're ticking all the boxes, I'm sure there's someone they'll want to be known as like the sponsor that backed them on their rise. Yeah, time will tell though. So we'll get into what Rue discussed with Ivan Cleary having a bit of a wah-wah. So he has said that he believes the Panthers deserve compensation for having a lot of their players poached. His exact quote was, "We develop a lot of players here that end up elsewhere, so I feel like we should get looked after more by the NRL." I think it's a poor take, but what do you reckon?
Actually, first question: how do you think they're not being looked after by the NRL? And does he feel they're being picked on?
They're not being treated any different to the other 16 teams.
Then,
it opens a can of worms. If what they're saying now, if you get compensated for developing a player, if they do sign David Fifita, does that mean they give money to the Broncos?
But sorry, but
True.
Unless there is the we should be looked after, is bullshit. If he says that, you know what, if you develop a player and he goes, oh, you should get an extra $5,000 towards salary cap or whatever it is, then fine. But but by saying we should be looked after better by the NRL, that's just bullshit.
Yeah, and it is the downside of having such. It's the downside of having a good pathway system where you can't keep everyone. We discussed it at length. When you have the Panthers have been that where they lose a player, the next one and the pathway comes in, and they don't seem to lose a step. I think the only way he could have credence for it is if they were bottom of the ladder now because all of these players had been poached and they were struggling to perform. That would be the only time you could do it. But the NRL, they don't care. I think they would only care if other sports were poaching these players and they were losing from the NRL. They don't really care if Jerome Luai goes to the Tigers and leaves the Panthers because he's still in the game. Yeah. But yeah, me and Paul just stole all of that from you. So your turn now, mate. You there, Richie? Or you're just thinking? Hello?
Lost you, Brad.
Can you hear me now? Can you hear me? Hello.
Lost you.
All right, Paul. Can you hear me?
I'm sure I'll be back in a minute.
Yeah, no, you're all good. You're fine.
Right.
Richie's just.
It's Richie. Okay.
He's in the twilight zone.
All right. So I'll just keep talking then. So what do you reckon about it, Paul? Do you think they should look at something in the future for an NRL wide thing about developing it? It opens a can of worms because where do you start with the developing of a player?
Yeah, look, yes, it's you say that if you do something like anyone who joined you before the age of X, when they leave, if you get X amount, and you then why not? Then fine, but I think this idea, as I said, this idea that you shouldn't have that that they're not being treated, you should get special treatment is bullshit. But one that's NRL wide, as long as everyone's playing by the same rules, who cares, right? Everyone gets a chance to take advantage of it. So as long as you're all playing by the same rules, then it's fair game.
Yeah, I agree. Are you back, Richie, or are you not?
Yep. No, you seem to have cleared up. Want my take?
Yeah.
Probably the same as your guys. That's the nature of pro sport. That's the nature of salary cap. You go well for 3-4 years in a row, you're going to lose people. They're going to demand higher contracts. They're going to find those higher contracts elsewhere from teams that are willing to empty their wallets.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. Simon said basically the Roosters and Storm, who don't have any juniors, won't benefit from the system. Yeah, they are two teams that like to bring in. So they wouldn't benefit from it. So maybe it is a good idea just to screw them over a little bit. I don't know. But before we get into signings, a bit of fun to end the news, mate. So we've already talked about it a lot, but Jack Bird was celebrating his 150th NRL game, and there was a bit of a mishap with his jersey. With the details showing, when you have a milestone match, they put a nice little message on about what it is. Paul's just brought up the picture for us. For anyone listening and not watching, it has his name, 150 NRL games. Then it has who you're playing, where it is, and the date and whatnot. And somehow they had one job, but when they decided to spell dragons, they spelt it wrong. So he was playing for the Dargons against the Sharks. Bit of a stuff up, obviously, there. But it's provided a lot of humor for the league community. We told Paul before we went live that KO Sports in Australia, which is where you can watch a lot of sport, for this week's game for the Dragons, they've actually called them the Dargons in the promo. But what's your take on it? It's either, as Paul said, it was either outsourced to someone who didn't do the job right, or it's some poor young intern who was working a bit too late at night and didn't do the spell check. Well, what do you reckon? I know it's just a way for me to stick the boot into the Dragons, but
it's hilarious, and it's funny that it's, you've got a zoomed in picture of it that's found its way onto social media and done the rounds, and it's so funny. Don't know how you make that mistake. I won't get into it too hard on that, because I was talking with you during the week about Zion Maiu, and I couldn't even spell Zion correctly. So
we won't talk about that. But yeah, it's I'd expect it more with like the Rabbitohs or the Warriors, where you might leave an R out of the Warriors or leave a B out of the Rabbits as a mistake. But yeah, I suppose, A and R, they're not even that close on the keyboard. So I don't know. It's weird.
A dyslexic person got the role of typing that out.
Yeah, and we were talking about it, but Simon's just mentioned, they said KO Sports brilliant in Australia. On your smart TV, you can watch the sporting matches at the same time, and that it's only Sky Sports now that only allow you to watch one thing on your smart TV. Yeah, KO is brilliant from the people in Australia I know that can watch it. We're definitely a step behind when it comes to that stuff, but Paul can probably attest to it as well. There's no competition for Sky over here. And anyone that's tried hasn't been able to deliver. So they can do whatever they want because they're the only dog in town.
Yeah, cycling, for example, is one that I follow, and they. I'm trying to watch the Giro d'Italia, one of the biggest bike races of the year, and they've had to they've had to resort to their own streaming service that puts New Zealand in the same category as things like Afghanistan, Sudan, and these sort of places that don't have a proper TV purchaser to actually broadcast it. So we're in the same broadcast category as, say, as Afghanistan, as far as cycling is concerned. So it's a bit of a joke, unfortunately. But before you move off the news, I thought we should probably touch on the kind of the stadium situation in Auckland, because currently there are 4 new stadiums or 3 new stadiums being proposed and being looked at, and this will be reviewed in May, or the result will be in May. One of them is actually redevelopment of Eden Park, which I know you wouldn't be behind, Brad. Then there's talk of 2 waterfront stadium, either at Wynyard Point or at Bledisloe Quarter, and the 4th one is just to the east of Auckland, next door to Sharp indoor arena on the old railway yards there. I'm sorry, I'm going to butcher the Maori word here, but the Turanga option as well. So there's those there. Currently, the Warriors and Blues haven't backed any of them, but the NRL, sorry, the New Zealand Rugby has backed the one at Tongaranga, out by that indoor stadium. Currently, the Warriors have a 10 plus 10 year deal at Mount Smart that kicked in 2018. So there's absolutely no rush for them. They've got it in writing from Auckland Council. They can play there for another another 15 years. So they don't have to move unless they want to. What are your boys' thoughts on those 4 stadiums and also Mount Smart?
I have personal bias. I kind of agree with what Simon said, where he says he supports the waterfront stadium for it to be the Warriors, the Blues, and the Auckland FC. If all 3 teams are using it, I could see the point of it. As someone who doesn't like leaving this place I call a house, I don't like the idea of having to go all the way to the waterfront, all the way. It makes it sound like I live miles away. But I don't like having to travel anywhere. And it's a 5 to 10 minute drive from here to Mount Smart for me. So I don't mind that. And it's my home away from home. So I'm always going to be leaning towards it. But if they have a nice flash waterfront stadium, I could see the benefits of it. Eden Park, just stick some dynamite to it and turn it into a condo area or something. Get rid of it. But yeah, out of all of them, waterfront would be the only one I could see as financially viable in terms of it. You know, you go to Britomart and go to the stadium. You've got the bars and stuff around. That makes sense. If that's something they want to do. But I'm more than happy to stay in my crappy little seat at Mount Smart.
I think Toowoomba next door to the Spark Indoor Arena. That's central as well. You can walk there from Britomart. It's not very far really. So all 3 new options are really central. I think from that point, are central Auckland from that point of view.
Yeah, and Jacko told me to harden up because others travel for hours to get to Mount Smart. Yeah, you just got to move closer to Mount Smart like I did.
Now the only problem is that the Blues are apparently coming up to the end of their lease agreement at Eden Park on the 2026. So although they can move to Mount Smart in 2026, you can have the football team there as well, the new ARL, whatever the AAF, whatever the Australian football football team there as well.
Knights, something like that.
A-League, that's what it's called.
Yeah.
So you could have 3 teams trying to play there. In which case, the only issue might be the quality of the pitch might deteriorate quickly being played on that much.
Yeah, but so if they were leaving, I'd go. Jacko said he can't afford Auckland house price or rents like me. I can't afford them either, mate. But yeah, waterfront would be the only other one, maybe. But that I still feel like that's a pipe dream that's never going to happen. I feel I know you said New Zealand Rugby is kind of backing it, but I don't know. I feel like they're always slaves to Eden Park. So Eden Park will all of this will happen, and they'll just do another development on Eden Park.
Yeah, I mean the time to do it was Rugby Union the Rugby World Cup.
Yeah.
That you actually had an event to build a stadium for. Now, what are you building it for now? Apart from two All Blacks games a year, plus maybe a couple of finals. I mean, because I can't see the Warriors filling a 50,000 seater stadium on a regular basis. The Blues definitely can't. We've seen that, and I can't see the football either. So they're all much better in a 20,000 seater, which I think is what Mount Smart is now. So the 50,000, you're only doing that for Taylor Swift, Ed Sheeran coming once every 6 years, and to Auckland and to All Blacks. So yeah, the money's just not there for that stadium.
Yeah. And yeah, like Simon said, the owner of Auckland FC is a multi-billionaire from the United States, so he's probably going to invest in a new stadium. Yeah, he's got the money as well, which money talks. But yeah, I haven't studied it like Paul has. Paul kind of threw it at us out of nowhere.
You said that you said pre-show that actually you're better off without prep. So here I am just trying to.
You did say that.
I'm getting personally attacked by everyone for liking Mount Smart. It's my home. I love it. I've been going there since I was a kid. So, yeah. But I've said I'll go anywhere where the Warriors go as long as it's not Eden Park. So if they moved permanently to Eden Park, I would probably stop going to live games and watching them in the comfort of my own home. But yeah, anything else you want to add before we move on?
Move on, mate.
All right, signings. We've only got one, and we talked about it last week, but it's been confirmed now. So Lewis Dodd from St. Helens, the half, he is now signed with the Rabbitohs officially on a 3-year deal from 2025. So we discussed it a lot last week. We were saying, like, be interesting how he can make the jump from Super League to the NRL. And it's probably more interesting for what's going to happen with Lachlan now. But you got anything else you wanted to add to it?
Nah, not really. It's interesting how it will play out. We see so many big English forwards come over here and do quite well, but not a lot in the way of backs. Tompkins, blah blah blah. Widdop was good, yeah, but be interesting.
Widdop and George Williams were really the only two that pop out for me.
There'll be a lot of pressure on them there at the Rabbitohs.
Yeah. So we'll move on to injuries, which we do actually have quite a few. I didn't even get all of them. I've just grabbed kind of the big guys this week. So Storm have got 2. Ryan Poppenhausen, he's got a small fracture to his fibula and or fibula, which it's similar to what I had, I think, at the beginning or around Christmas. And he's going to need surgery and will miss 4 to 6 weeks. Big loss for the Storm after they were getting momentum. And they've also lost Jerome Hughes for the next 2 to 3 weeks with a calf injury. So, made my tip for them might be a bit bad this week. But what do you reckon about Pap and Hughes? I feel like the spine has got horrible luck this year.
Yeah, and they were starting to get some traction and gel as well. Definitely a bit of a setback, and I feel bad for Pappenhausen, who's just cursed when it comes to injuries, and he's finally getting a bit of a good run. But yeah, it's like you say, Brad, might affect the next couple of Storm tips.
Yeah, definitely. And then the Rabbits, they have lost Cameron Murray. He's got a hip flexor injury. He's going to miss the next 6 to 8 weeks, which I believe means he's going to miss Origin. Or game 1 of Origin at least. That's a massive loss for the Rabbits, who are already struggling. He's kind of the backbone of that team.
Yeah, and it wasn't just him. They lost a couple of others as well, but he's the big one, I think. They're going to get Latrell back, but with Murray gone, I don't see things getting any better for for the Rabbits. I mean, he's probably the one good influence on the team at the moment. So,
Yeah.
not good.
And
not
then
good.
the Broncos have two. Probably the biggest injury news for the week. They've lost Adam Reynolds, who tore his bicep, and he requires surgery and is going to be out for 12 to 14 weeks. And season-defining change, really, it could be. And Jesse Arthurs is out for 6 weeks for breaking his jaw. So that one is an easier hole to fill. Arthur's, no offense to poor Jesse, but Adam Reynolds for 14 weeks just changes the whole complexity of how good or bad the Broncos could be. I'm not saying they're going to fall off a cliff by any stretch of the imagination, but he's an integral part of that team.
But you look at the Broncos this year. I mean, they really have been up and down. It's either very good or very bad. Lost by 10, won by 10, lost by 22, won by 26, lost by 2, won by 14, won by 24, won by 24, lost by 22. I mean, most of their games are decided by 20 odd points. That's just that's madness.
He's the calming figure really in that team, and you got Walsh, who massive plays, but a lot of errors in him as well. Same with Mam. Mam is kind of an off-the-cuff guy. They've got a lot of X factor in their team, but he's the one that balances them out. So I think they'll still win a lot of games just from some of the X factor they've got. But when some games are in the balance against a tougher team, that's where they might feel that one.
Yeah, it's a high-risk, high-reward kind of style they have. It's either going to work well for them or it's going to bite them in the ass, depending on the day. But yeah, that's the guy that steadies the ship when things get tight. So yeah, we'll see how they go. Another one that's probably just as devastating, but it's for the Titans. Tanner Boyd dislocated his wrist. He's going to be out for 6 weeks. That's a massive blow. We've been talking about them, week by week. They've been showing some backbone and actually being competitive, regardless of who they're facing. And he's been a real live wire in their attack to actually create opportunities. So losing him, I think, is going to derail them a bit there, unfortunately. Could have happened a few weeks ago, but it hasn't. It happened now.
Yeah, well, at least they've still got Brimson and in his rightful position. I mean, I think they'll still be dangerous.
Yeah, and then the last one is Kurt Capewell from the Warriors, injured his calf and will miss this week at least. It's disappointing. It feels like it's one step forward, 3 steps back when it comes to the injuries with the Warriors. When they get someone back, they usually either aren't back for long or they lose someone else. So disappointing there.
Yeah, I just don't like the reshuffle it causes with throwing Mitch Barnett to second row, and he's more than capable there. But I think we were speaking about it on our chat group. I just like the work he does up in the middle. Yeah.
We'll discuss it with the team list later on, mate. You're getting too far ahead of yourself. So we'll go to Naughty Boy Corner. We've got 3. So we've got Aiden Caesar from the Tigers. He got a grade 3 dangerous contact for his hip drop tackle. He got 4 weeks, 4-week ban. Jacob Host, grade 2 dangerous contact for the Rabbits. He got a 2-match ban. And then Isaac Targo from the Panthers got a 1-match ban for a grade 2 dangerous contact. To be honest, I think all of these are fair. I think the 4 matches is okay for Caesar since he didn't get sin-binned like he should have. I think if he got sin-binned as well, I would have reduced it down to maybe 2 or 3. But with no sin-bin, I'm happy with the 4. But what do you reckon?
Yeah, it's all pretty much fair. I just don't like the inconsistencies with the hip drop. Seems to be different every time in terms of grading and what happens on the field. Some people get sin-bin, some people don't. Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, what you think even not that long ago, at the start of the season, if you did a hip drop, it was an automatic sin-bin and you usually had at least 1 or 2 weeks suspension on top of it.
Yeah.
And now it is kind of flipping a coin on, you probably, with a hip drop, you're probably going to see some time suspended, but now it depends on who the player is, who they're playing on, if they get sin-binned or not.
Now you got people lying down for a penalty in that situation now too.
Yeah.
Because it seems like if you're injured, that's when you get the penalty and people sent to the bin. So it's created this situation where people actually lying down when they're being tackled from behind.
Yeah, exactly. It's kind of like the new what's the I can't remember the one where you
The
put your head
crusher,
in. It's like the new crusher now, where anyone holds onto their neck hoping to pull a penalty. But yeah, it's a nightmare. But we'll move on. We'll move on to round 9 now. Yeah, Paul say super soft. But starting on Thursday with the Panthers defeating the Rabbits 24-12.
Yeah, is that scoreline right, Brad? It's 42-12, isn't it?
Was it?
Yeah.
My
Not
bad.
24. Anyway.
Oh, yeah,
anyway.
no, yeah, it is 42 because 7 tries. Oh, I'm not good with numbers,
42-12.
all right, guys? Leave me alone. It was late.
And I know this because see the
42-12.
Ben Hornby debut at Rabbitohs, coached the Rabbitohs, lost 42-12 this week. His debut as a player was Dragons versus Panthers, and they lost 42-12. What are the odds of that?
Nice.
Anyway, seven tries to 2 here for the Panthers. Sunia Taruva, Brad Schneider, Luke Garner, Lindsay Smith, Taylor May, Luke Garner again, and Isaac Tango. 2 tries for the Rabbitohs. The first 2 tries of the game, Isaac Tuitupo Thompson and Dean Hawkins.
Yeah, the Panthers made easy work of the Rabbits here, which I think we all expected before this game even started. They ripped their defense to shreds. A big game from James Fisher-Harris, I thought, in the middle, which allowed Schneider and Luai to get to work. Such a dangerous side with or without Cleary, which is scary. But yeah, your take on the Panthers?
Scary, yeah, like you said, not even at their very best, I felt, but still far too good for the out-of-form Bunnies. They withstood the early pressure from the Bunnies, conceded the 2 tries, but from that point went 42 unanswered points in the last 60 or so minutes. So after they absorbed that early onslaught, they went to town. Yeah,
and your thoughts on the Rabbits?
Yeah, obviously, like I said, hot start with a couple of early tries, but back to more of the same from there on out. The try off the 20-metre tap restart that Dylan Edwards set up pretty much sums up the Bunnies' effort all year so far. I don't think you could count any Rabbits player that sort of made any effort to get back to defend that. Edwards just sprinted past them all and passed it. There was no one there. Yeah,
it was crazy. I couldn't believe it when I saw that. It was like that. It was like the biggest display of not actually caring at all. There was no effort. But yeah, if I want to be positive about the Rabbits, we've been harping on it all year about their errors. They did reduce the errors, but their attack asked no questions outside of the first 10 minutes. And they need to work on their defense. I think Paul brought up the stat. They missed 33 tackles, and their discipline as well. 2 sin bins, and it's the like holy trinity of trouble for them. It's either the errors let them down, their defense lets them down, or their discipline lets them down. And it's usually always 2 of the 3 happen in the same game, if not all 3. So there's no upside for them this year. I think we already said a few weeks ago, I was putting my line through them. I expect them to nab a few wins, potentially this week when they play a team that I never pick. But yeah, shocking display. I know Paul said Luke Garner got the fantasy points. Who did you go with? I know we both picked the same guy and it wasn't Garner.
No, Dylan Edwards. For me, Dylan Edwards looks even more... I mean, he's already noticeable out there. He touches the ball so many times per game, but when Cleary's not playing, it's like you notice it even more. It's like there's 2 of them out there. It's crazy.
Yeah, I went with him too when they've got a guy like Cleary out, he does increase his participation. Not to say that he's resting on his laurels when Cleary's out there, but he knows that the team needs a bit more out of him in those efforts, and he always delivers. He's a fantastic player. So had to give him the raps there. But we'll move on to Friday. I'm pretty sure I got the score right on this one, mate. I'm not dyslexic. 26-24, the Raiders. Fantastic comeback from them to beat Seagulls.
It was 5 tries apiece in this one. For the Raiders, we had K.O. Weeks, 2 to Elliot Whitehead, 1 to Nick Kotrick and Hudson Young. For Manly, Tom Trebojevic, Tommy Talau, Daly Cherry Evans, and 2 for Ruben Garrick.
Yeah, tight contest here, but it didn't really start that way with the Raiders having to do a lot of work in the second half, which isn't something that's been their strong suit. It's fair to say. They do have to bring the penalties down, I think. But I thought they showed a lot of heart to get the result here. A tough, gritty team that's always a chance of getting the win if they can drag their opposition into the grind, which is exactly what we saw here. But your take on the Raiders?
Yeah, great comeback win. With their backs against the wall, pretty much written off by most pre-game, given what happened to them the week before against the Sharks. I think it was 40-0, 42-0, something like that. This week they showed the fight Canberra teams normally display and made up for that poor showing the week before.
Yeah, and your thoughts on the Seagulls?
Obviously, good start. 20 points to 6 up at halftime. Playing some good footy, scoring some nice tries. This is a game Manly should have held on and won. They've shown a few times this year they can drop a lead. They did it against the Warriors, 16-point lead. There's a couple of times this year they've let big leads slip. So defense is definitely a work on for them as well. It's cost them the 2 points this week, but kind of the similar situation to the Cowboys, where their attack can be so slick, but defense a little soft at times.
Yeah, they just switched off for me in the second half, poor old Seagulls. I'm not sure if they thought they had it in the bag and took the foot off the gas. But once they realized they were actually in a contest, it was too late for them to get back in. Just almost like that Warriors game where they were comfortable. Then when they realized there was a fight on, they struggled to put stuff together. And after, I think we put the knockers on him last week, mate. We praised Ruben Garrick's goal kicking last week. And he had a shocker this week. He was 2 from 5. And, if he had gone 50%, it could have been a different story. But, yeah, that was one of the big things that led to this side's defeat. Simon said the Raiders followed Ricky's instructions correctly this week. Yeah, and to be honest, at halftime, I thought we were looking at another massive loss for them. I gave them no optimism about getting into this match. So it was very depressing first half to sit there and watch going, why are we even bothering? And then, it was a very exciting second half for them. And Paul said Elliot Whitehead led the fantasy points. Who did you pick?
Went with the fantasy points. Yeah, Whitehead was a standout, particularly in that second half. A couple of tries. He had a try, not beautiful try assist as well. I think without Whitehead, without his efforts, they lose that game.
Yeah, I went with Whitehead too. 2 tries in 5 minutes, which you don't really say a lot with Mr. Whitehead. But yeah, I thought he was fantastic out there in the middle for them. He always gives 100%. And I think he was a big difference maker in that second half. Well done to Simon for his Raiders. And we'll move on to what was meant to be the game of the round, but one that I was a bit disappointed because one team didn't really show up. That was the Roosters defeating the Broncos 40-18.
Yep, 7 tries to 3 for the Roosters. Joey Manu, 2 for Angus Crichton, 1 for Terrell May, Connor Watson, 2 for Terrell May actually, and Dom Young. 3 tries for the Bronx, Jordan Ricky, Katoni Staggs, Ezra Mam.
Yeah, the Roosters' attack just continues to shine. They've scored 100 points in the past 2 rounds, Despite facing a quality side like Brisbane, they looked unstoppable with the ball in hand, and their defense was impressive too, only allowing in those 3 tries. They never looked in doubt in this entire match, and I'm struggling to have any hope at all this week for the Warriors. Your take on the Chooks?
Similar to you, Brad. Another big win, and the Roosters do the double over the Broncos this year, having already beaten them in Las Vegas. They're looking really deadly the past couple of weeks. Like you say, 100 points last 2 games. Very nervous for this weekend. I got to say, like so many of their big players are stepping up, and it's I'm hoping, but at the same time, I'm not.
Yeah.
I'm not sure.
Yeah, and your thoughts on the Bronx?
Just too many errors and panic decisions. Chip kicks and grubbers early in the tackle count a number of times, which just gave the ball away. Relying on counterpunch scoring didn't work this week. We said last week and previous weeks they're very good at that, but against a good opposition this week, it didn't do them any favours. And losing Reynolds and Arthurs really hurts too. But I think even if Reynolds stayed on, they were going to drop this game. Roosters looking too good.
Yeah, the Broncos were in this match in the early stages, but when Reynolds went off injured, they lost direction. And with their defense struggling to contain the Roosters, they never got back into the contest. It is going to be interesting to see how they go long term without Reynolds out there directing traffic. But it's like we said earlier, the high risk, high reward way they play. It could have been 40-18 the other way if that high risk actually worked in this contest, and it didn't. You saw Walsh. I think there was some people said Walsh was playing more like the Warriors Walsh than the Broncos Walsh in this game, which does happen from time to time when the pressure's on and they're looking at him to do something. It's either going to be something amazing or he's going to shit the bed, which is what we saw. And be interesting. There's going to be a lot more pressure on him the next few weeks. So very disappointing for the Broncos. And I think Jacko said the Chooks are in a purple patch at the moment with a great lineup, which we'll discuss when we talk about them facing us, because I think it's pretty much full strength.
You say that, but I mean, they still have only once. This is the first time this season they've managed to do back-to-back wins, and it's only 2 wins on the bounce. So to say they're in a purple patch with a winning streak of 2 wins,
I would take that.
I think we're taking into account what's going to happen. I think we're taking into account what's going to happen this weekend.
Yeah, it's three wins in a row in a couple of days, Paul. But yeah, they've been fantastic.
I mean, the Warriors have won 3 in a row this year, whereas the Roosters haven't.
Yeah, we've also just lost 3 in a row though, so it's all around there. Your player to stand out, Richie?
Went Angus Crichton. A couple of tries, just looked really dangerous on that left side in general all night, and I think he has for the past 2 or 3 games as well started to look like the old Angus Crichton. So, I went with him.
Yeah, and I don't know who the fantasy leader was, but I went with James Tedesco, which will probably end up being the fantasy leader, no doubt. But I think so because I've actually put stats here, which usually means I'm defending myself against fantasy. So he ran for 265 meters. He had 2 line breaks, 2 line break assists, and 2 try assists. He, I think he was one of the guys I predicted on the Ruin Hammer show would have a bad year. And Angus Crichton led fantasy points. Yeah. So I think I predicted Tedesco would be on the way out. And he's really turned around this year. Not to say he was bad last year, but he's definitely performing at a higher level now. So, he's one of several danger men out there. And Jacko said, I forgot to mention actually, so we'll just segue. He said, Joey Manu says he wants an All Black jersey, so he may not be returning to the Chookies after a stint in Japan. It's easy. I've got an All Black jersey. It's in the cupboard. Just go down to Rebel Sports. You can grab as many as you want, Joey. But be interesting to see if he gets there. That's probably more a question for Paul, but I want to see him actually play some rugby first.
He can
but
come play for the Hurricanes.
yeah,
Give that a crack.
I think he'd look good in it. He's from the Tron, mate. He's from the mighty Waikato, so he should be a chief.
He is. He's a Tokoroa boy, isn't he?
He is. So come to the Chiefs, buddy. We'll welcome you. We'll move on to the first game on Saturday. Bulldogs defeating the Tigers 22-14.
3 tries to 2 for the Doggies. Kurt Mann, Josh Curran, Bronson Sherry. For the Tigers, Charlie Staines and Funopole.
Yeah, another tight groin fest here. The Bulldogs held their nerve and got the job done, reduced their errors and penalties and played a simple game, which is just what the doctor ordered in this type of match. Still a lot of improvement to go, but the Bulldogs are starting to show some potential. I know there was some shocking calls involved in this game, which helped.
Yeah. Yep.
But they're building slowly. They're not world beaters by any stretch of the imagination, and they're both of these sides of teams trying to get better. So I expected a tight match. But yeah, I was happy enough with what I saw from the Bulldogs to know that they're going to be a tough team to face, but they don't intimidate me by any stretch. But your take on the Dogs?
Yeah, the Dogs will be happy with the win. Trailing 14-6 at halftime. They've shown this year they've got a never say die attitude this year, and they're looking like an improved side from previous number of years. I don't know if it's just the second year now that Serraldo's got them and they're starting to build on that culture. But yeah, they don't roll over this year like they do like they have in previous seasons. You know, maybe last year, the year before, they're down 14-6 at halftime and they get well beaten. But they definitely look an improved side.
Yeah, your take on the Tigers?
Like the Dogs, I think the Tigers are an improved team this year too. They're letting a few results slip the past few weeks, but they're I can see the beginnings of something there under Benji, which, like we've already said, you know, it could bear fruit when Luai and Taruva arrive. Sort of similar to the Dogs, maybe another couple of years building the culture, and I see good things on the horizon. Hopefully no more wooden spoons.
Yeah, another near miss for the Tigers. They were in this contest for the first 70 minutes, going toe-to-toe with the Dogs in most stats, but the Jill Simbins in the final 10 sealed their fate here, unfortunately. Another big improver, as you just said, in 2024, despite being on a losing streak, as Paul's mentioned, a 5-game losing streak. I think their next win's not that far away. They're battling in each and every contest. Your player to stand out?
Matty Burton. I think he's come out the last few games and looked really good as well. I mean, I think across the board they're just looking like a team that battles 1 through 17. But yeah, I thought Matt Burton was quite good this week.
Yeah, I went with Kikau. I was tempted with Burton, but I think Kikau's been he led the fantasy points too, as Paul's just mentioned. He's been devastating out there and just been a real monster with the ball in hand, and he's been a defensive presence as well. It's good to see him kind of living up to the perceived potential he was meant to be when he's been a bit flat with injuries and whatnot the past few seasons. So yeah, thought it was a great game from him too. So we'll move on to another tight one on Saturday. The Storm holding on by the bare minimum to beat the Titans 22-20.
Yep, 4 tries to 3 here for the Storm. Cam Munster, Will Warbrick, Ryan Pappenhausen and Sua Falongo. For the Titans, Kieran Foran, Philip Sami and AJ Brimson were the try scorers.
Yeah, tough encounter for the Storm here. Having Pap go down injured took some sting out of their attack, especially when Falongo went off not long after him with an HIA. May have taken the Titans too lightly as well, and would have been a bigger win if their goal kicking was better. But they'll be happy to escape with the 2 points here, especially with some calls that went their way. I'm looking forward to see what Fa'alongo does at fullback while Pep's out, though. And like a silver lining to that injury cloud. But your take on the Storm?
Yeah, 100%. And he showed a little glimpse, didn't he, off when he got his try off the scrum, going left and sort of put on a goosey and then swerve in and out. And you can see the potential there with Fa'alongo. It looks deadly. But for the Storm, they seem to be the kings of the close game, and the kings of the close game were back this week. Looked to be travelling well in the first half. Losing Pappy didn't help. Obviously, I thought he was looking deadly before going off, and I feel for him because those combos were starting to build, and I thought Pappy's looked really good so far this year. But unfortunate there to pick up an injury to keep him out for the next few weeks.
Yeah, your take on the Titans?
I think this game proved the Titans have come on really well over the past month after a horror start. I've said it a number of times. I think Brimson at fullback is a must. They look a far better side with his influence from the back, and I think that's even when Jaden Campbell returns. I think they got to keep Brimson where he is, and maybe Campbell has to resign himself to a number 14 spot.
Paul, stop calling them the Stormers. We're not watching Union, mate. Come on, it's the Storm. No plurals. You see that you're getting my little. I'm getting heart palpitations. I'm getting heart palpitations about seeing Stormers there. I'm watching this week. Getting back after Paul distracted me there. It made me a bit more understanding of how the Titans beat the Warriors last week. It's kind of sitting there going, if they're doing this to the Storm as well, they're not as rubbish as we've all been saying. And they're delivering solid performances week in, week out now. Nothing fancy, just big games from the back, and the back's making the most of the opportunities they get. Brian Kelly, still trying to find his groove as a goal kicker. I know the commentators were joking about if it's on the sidelines, he's going to nail it. If it's right in front, he's going to shank it. But they've definitely turned a corner the past month. And I agree with your sentiments about AJ Brimson. I don't know what you do with Campbell when he comes back because he's a very talented player. But you can definitely say Brimson makes that team look better when he's at fullback than when Campbell's out there. So do you think Campbell comes into the halves with Tanner Boyd out?
Yeah, maybe. But yeah, Brimson's got to be in the fullback position for me. Yeah.
And your player to stand out, David Fafita led fantasy points overall, and Harry Grant was the highest for the Storm.
Yeah, I actually went Pappenhausen. He didn't even play the whole game, but I thought he was mighty impressive before going off. He's just looked threatening, got a try, making line breaks. This is why it's such a bummer. He's gone for the next few weeks.
He didn't even play half the game.
Doesn't matter.
He played 39 minutes.
And
I just want to point out
he played the half where they were playing good.
I just want to point out that
they go south.
You were giving me crap last week, mate, that I picked a guy that got cramps as my player, and you're going with a guy that got injured. Honestly.
That came from a place of I don't like Reece Walsh.
I succumbed to fantasy and I went with David Fafita. I think he's been one of their best players this year. He's just been a monster. A bit like the cacao talking that we've been discussing, and it's no surprise that every team in Sydney wants Fafita with how he's playing right now.
I think this is the first time we've had a player of the game from either of you two. You've gone with a player from the losing team. Wow.
Yeah.
I can't remember the last time that happened.
Richie's
usually the one that glorifies losers.
Maybe not this season. I think it hasn't been since last season, but I have done that a few times.
I was almost close to doing it in the Warriors game coming up, but I relented and went with the winning team. But we'll go to the final game on Saturday. Another tight one. Dolphins defeating the Cowboys 28-26.
Yep, and this one was 5 tries apiece. So again, goal kicking made a difference for the Dolphins. Jermaine Asako got a hat trick. Tessie New and Jake Avarillo, they were the try scorers. For the Cowboys, Kyle Felt, Ruben Cotter, Jeremiah Nanai got 2, and Sam McIntyre. Um, 3 from 5 from the T for Valentine Holmes, 4 from 5 from Jermaine Asako. That was the difference.
Yeah, another exciting game to watch with the
Three
Dolphins
from,
putting
three
on.
from 6. He missed a penalty as well.
Yeah, he did.
Oh yeah, you're right. You're right.
Yeah, it doesn't show that on our stats I gave you, Richie. Sorry. But yeah, another exciting game with the Dolphins putting on some exciting tries. Looked dangerous at times, but lost some steam in the second half that could have cost them if the Cowboys hadn't run out of puff. If I were to be critical, I would say the defense needs to tighten up, as going try for try isn't an ideal way to get wins, but it worked for them in this match. Your thoughts on the Cowboys?
On the Cowboys, you want me to go Dolphins first?
Dolphins, sorry.
Yeah, I have to tip my hat to the Dolphins with all their injuries and conceding early points. They remained composed and took the 2 points on the road. I thought they were quite clinical. After the Cowboys' good start, it seemed like every time the Dolphins got down, the Cowboys in, they'd come away with points. So, yeah, so far this year, their depth is holding up a lot better than it did last year.
Yeah, and your thoughts on the Cowboys?
Again, poor defense from the Cowboys. They look good with the ball, but every time the Dolphins went into the Cowboys half, the Cowboys would concede. It's proving really costly for the Cowboys, who had a hot start, maybe against some not top tier teams, and yeah, now they're starting to be shown up a few times. So
yeah, the Cowboys were going toe to toe with the Dolphins in the first half, but they struggled to find points in that second half. Another side let down by goal kicking this week, and they'll be disappointed that they let this one slip. Yeah, they're just there's some weaknesses. I don't want to say mentally. It just seems like sometimes when the pressure's being put on, they wilt a little bit, which is kind of what we saw here. And I know every Cowboys fan was screaming for blood on Valentine Holmes. But unfortunately, yeah, if he had been a bit more accurate with his kicks, we'd be talking about a different result here for sure. But your player to stand out, I think we picked the same guy.
Yeah, hard to not go Jermaine Asako. 3 tries and goal kicking was a difference, and that was all Asako. But yeah.
Yeah.
Did he lead fantasy?
I'd say I'd have to with a hat trick and all his kicks.
You'd think. Yeah.
No, Ruben Cotter led fantasy with 83. Okay. Yeah, I went with Asako as well. It's hard to not pick the guy that gets a hat trick, and he's the guy that scores most of their points every week anyway. So yeah, had to go with him. So congrats on the Dolphins for surprising everyone by still being relevant at this point of the season. Jermaine did lead for the Dolphins. Paul's put in there. So we'll move to Sunday's game, the first one. Knights defeating the Warriors 14-8.
I was hoping we'd move past this one, but we'll move on to it anyway.
We're contractually obligated to discuss every game. Paul's threatened us.
Yes, yeah. It's only 2 tries to 1 here for the Knights. Tyson Gamble, Daniel Saifidi. For the Warriors, just the 1 try, Dylan Walker.
Yeah, messy game in horrible conditions, but the Knights' game plan in the wet worked wonders, and they refused to panic, even when it looked like the Warriors had taken the lead. Defended almost everything the Warriors threw at them. Not a pretty win by any stretch of the imagination, but they're now 2-0 without Ponga, so they'll be happy with that when everyone wrote them off the moment he got injured. Your take on the Knights?
Yeah, I thought this game was a real tough watch. It was a grind in horrible conditions, but I've got to give credit to the Knights. They weren't amazing. themselves, but their defense was really strong, and winning without Ponga is normally tough going for them. But they've gone two in the trot now, so um, yeah, maybe there's something to your argument, Brad. I know you used to say tongue in cheek they're better without him last year, but yeah, no, picking up results without Pong is big. The more they can do that, I think the more confidence it'll give them when he is back.
Yeah, I still stand by that. I think they are better. Well, they're more balanced without him, I'll say. They're a more balanced team, which is sometimes harder to defeat. You kind of know when he's out there, if you can shut him down, you're basically on your way. But when he's not there, you got to watch. You got to watch Best. You got to watch Gagai. There's threats all over the place when he's not the focal point. But yeah, your take on the Warriors?
It's just more of the same. Really is poor discipline, poor ball handling, poor use of the bench, stagnant attack that just looks like people have it figured out. People are just crowding the ruck in front of Egan and crowding the right hand side. Leaves me wondering why we just don't identify something and try something different. But yeah, nothing seems to be clicking for the Warriors right now. With a couple of tough games coming up, it's starting to look like a season that's on the verge of slipping away. Yeah, something needs to be done to stem the tide of losses and quickly.
Yeah, the pain as a Warriors fan continues with another poor display. I know there was a lot of talk about the 2 disallowed tries, but taking that completely away, the Warriors look lethargic on defense for the most part, and they're out of ideas on attack. They don't like to play in the wet, as we already know, it's kind of clear that the tricks that worked last year have been figured out from opposition, and they don't seem to have a plan B right now. Tough 2 weeks coming up for the Warriors, and it could get ugly. But what you were just saying, like I can't remember what show I was listening to. They were discussing the play to Dallin out the corner, which was unstoppable. The defense aren't even looking at anyone now, any of the forwards that are running the straight lines. They're looking at Chance coming around the back to Luke to Dallin. So all you need is 1 or 2 times to do that ball to a forward instead, and they'll probably go straight through because no one's watching them anymore because they know exactly what the Warriors are doing before the Warriors know. And then Jacko said we have to get more variations or we're doomed to miss the 8. Yeah. I've still got confidence that they can turn it around. It's not like they're getting thrashed every week. There's just some little tweaks, but that could be the Warriors' optimist in me that refuses to die.
We're not getting thrashed every week, but we're playing the bottom teams, Brad.
Yeah,
we should be doing the thrashing.
We were like this against the bottom teams last year too, mate. But yeah, I don't know. I'll keep digging myself a hole the more I try to make excuses. Get ready for the ambush this week, guys. That's what I'm saying.
Yes, please.
Your player.
I actually felt it a real struggle to pick a player this week because it just was that kind of game. Yeah, I went Gagai. I thought he did some nice things. Probably could have gone someone like Jackson Hastings as well, who looked like he was sort of better at controlling the wet weather style. But yeah, Gagai. I found it hard, but I think he had a couple of nice plays that stood out.
Yeah, and Paul's mentioned Jackson Hastings led fantasy points. I actually went with the other centre. I went with Bradman Best. I'm a big fan of him, and I thought he looked unstoppable whenever he had the ball in his hands. He was making Rocco Berry's night a living nightmare.
Yeah, true.
But yeah, just breaking tackles and that didn't score obviously, but yeah, I think he helped the Knights get out of their danger zone and get into some good field position with his big runs. Probably could have. Greg Marju had a big game like that too, but due to other parts of the game, I didn't want to pick him.
Yeah.
So we'll move to the final game. The Sharks beating the Dragons 20-10.
3 tries for the Sharks: Oregon Kafusi, Siosifa Talakai, and Tommy Hazelton. 2 tries for the Dragons. Michaeli Ravalawa with both of them.
Yeah, another close game, also in horrible conditions. After going into the shed to try behind, the Sharks could have panicked and tried to force their hand, which isn't ideal in wet weather. But they stayed composed, did the basics, knowing that eventually the Dragons would leave the door open, which is exactly what happened. A solid win in their first clash against Flanagan as well.
Yeah, it was too. They keep racking up the wins. Tough conditions, and they weren't as in the zone as they were last week, which honestly that's a hard result to top. I don't think they'll care as they're flying high right now and sitting pretty up the top end of the ladder.
Yeah, and your take on the
Dargan's
Dragons.
Yeah. Big improvement on their Anzac Day showing. They have good footy in them, but not consistently and not enough to hold on against the high-flying Sharks.
Yeah, Dragons were in the driver's seat in this contest, but when the pressure was on in the second half, they faltered for just a moment, and that was all the Sharks needed. They wanted to win this badly for their coach, but it wasn't to be, and perhaps that's why they gave away a few silly penalties, just pushing it a little bit too far. They've shown great improvement this season, which I cannot fault despite my bias against them. But I still think they're a step below a top 8 side in my mind. But yeah, there's a lot of lessons they would have got out of this one. Your player to stand out?
Went Nico Hines. He's just in a rich vein of form. Perfect off the tee again this week. He's, killing it.
Yeah, so Tom Eisenhuth led overall, but Nico Hines top for the Sharks. And I went with Nico as well. I think, whenever the Sharks play well, it's usually Nico that gets the credit. So I just went with the default. But yeah, it was hard to fault what he did, especially in those conditions when you can't expect too much free-flowing football. So that was the round, which will take us to either the tips or the ladder, depending on Paul. So we've got the tips. Shuddy FC is at the top. No one had a really good round. Everyone got 4 or 5. So a lot of upsets for our guys. Rockin' Horse Road second. I'm still third. ACT Hellcats fourth. Simon's fifth. Bjorn sixth. And Richie, you're seventh. They're starting to get a bit of a gap. Baby. But yeah, hopefully we can have a couple of big rounds. I want to get a perfect round at some point, but it's been a long way off.
It's tough.
But yeah,
it's tough.
Congrats to everyone. We're still standing relevant enough so we don't look complete tools in our own tipping comp. And then that will bring us to the ladder.
True.
You do the top 8, mate.
Yeah, I think I did the bottom last week. Cronulla sitting first place, Melbourne second, Penrith third, top 3 remains the same. Dolphins move up to 4th, Manly in 5th, Roosters move up to 6th, Broncos have dropped to 7th, and the Doggies holding on to 8th spot.
Yeah, and then for the bottom teams, the Raiders have moved up to 9th, Cowboys have moved down to 10th, Knights moved up to 11th, Parramatta moved up to 12th, Dragons have moved down to 13, Warriors down to 14, Tigers stay the same on 15, Titans stay the same on 16, and South stay the same on 17. There's still hope the Dragons could go to Wooden Spoon, mate. Still can happen. Disappointing to see the Warriors dropping down. They're still only 3 points out of the 8. Raiders are only out of the 8 because of points differential. There's still a lot of teams that can move up and move down. I'm still expecting a Dolphin slide. I'm expecting a Bulldog slide as well. And Sharks, I expect to slide, probably not out of the 8 though, but I don't see them staying on first. And yeah, for the bottom teams, I'm biased, but Warriors, Raiders, and Cowboys are ones I could see potentially moving up.
Yeah.
Anything else you want to add before we move on, or?
No, move on.
No,
mate.
Cool. So questions, did we answer everything from the group, Paul?
Yeah, he did. But I mean, one thing that's starting to we've kind of been a bit negative around the Broncos, and they've slipped kind of down. Does and they were kind of the big challengers to the Panthers last season. So it's and you've already said that the Sharks are expecting to slip. Melbourne, look, they've had so many close games. They're not winning. They're not really kind of winning comfortably. Is this now the Panthers' tournament or season to lose? I mean, or do you see some real proper challenges around there for them?
To be honest, there's always the Panthers season to lose every year.
Yeah.
I think right now, if I was picking, despite how low they are, I'd say it would be Panthers Roosters. I wouldn't be surprised in the final. But this time last year, I wasn't saying it was Panthers Broncos. So it's always hard to tell this early in. We're effectively like a third of the way into the season. It's just slightly over with 27 rounds. So we're 9 rounds in. So round 11 last year, Rabbitohs were first, and then they didn't even make the 8. So there can still be a lot of sliding. But yeah, Panthers are always in the driver's seat. But yeah, what do you reckon, Richie?
Yeah, I mean, Panthers have to be a clear-cut favourite. Roosters have looked good for 2 weeks in a row. You want to see that. I want to see that sustained for a longer period before I start calling them a threat. I've always thought the Broncos to be the next biggest challenger. They've just been hit pretty hard with injuries to key players, and yeah, it's Sharks are looking good for the time being, Brad. I just think maybe you were hot on them in the wrong season.
You were hot on the Roosters in the wrong season too, mate. I'm telling you. But
yeah, we'll see.
Yeah, I want to see the Sharks against a Melbourne, a Penrith, and that before I, get too bullish on them.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's hard to tell this early in the season. I know this is recorded for all time, so I don't want to write a team off and get wrong like I've done almost every year since we started this show. So everyone's got a fighter's chance.
You honestly believe anyone goes back and listens to these? Well, there we go.
True.
So that's my only question from the chat, or from me, for you guys.
All right. So we'll go with your question to me. They're both Warriors related. Spoilers for everyone watching.
Yeah. Would you have made any changes to the Warriors lineup this week after another disappointing game? If so, what changes would you have made?
Yeah, in my review, I said I didn't know, with spoilers for later on, I didn't know Jazz was going to be confirmed to be back. So for the forwards, I made no changes, just due to who they've got available. In the backs, I was tempted to drop Montoya, put Roger on the wing again, and bring Pompey into the centres. Dallin, it's kind of with how the form's been going, it's a flip of the coin on if you drop Dallin or Montoya. But Dallin's always guaranteed to have a try up his sleeve every game. So out of the two, I went with Montoya. And, last time Roger was forced to play on the wing was against the Rabbits, and we played quite well. I know that's not the reason, but I feel like they have to do something to change the team around a little bit. Webby isn't into that, as we're going to discuss soon. But that was probably the only one I could see with what we've got, other than Zion making the bench as my man crush. But what about you?
I was sorry, a player you booed onto the kind of onto the pitch. You're just bringing in? Where did that one come from? Wow.
I still boo him, but he's delivered when he's had to play this year in the centres when they pretend to make him a forward, which he ain't got the guts to be a forward. As one forward speaking, he's a pretty boy back, and that's where he needs to stay. But yeah, what about you, Richie?
I think our hands are kind of tied due to injuries in terms of our lineup, it's kind of hard to make wholesale changes, even though we've been traveling really poorly. I agree with your take on Roger to the wing and Pompey to centre. I think that could have been something to try. Um, I'd be tempted to shift out to Mighty Martin, but we just without Harris Tavita and
We don't
Metcalf,
have anyone yet.
we have
Yeah,
no
he was
have
on
no
my list
option.
too.
Yeah, our hand is forced there. So I think the shifts that we need is probably more tactically rather than lineup wise. Maybe if we had a fully fit roster, that might be different. But yeah,
Yeah, and Jacko said RTS needs to be moved. We're not getting anywhere near his best at centre. Pompey for D or young Ali if you want a more potent attack. Yeah, Ali, I'd be tempted, but he didn't play New South Wales Cup last week, and he's not named on the extended bench for the Warriors or New South Wales. So I don't know if there's an injury around him or not. I haven't heard anything, but something's happened. And yeah, Jacko said Webster will not change much, but come by around in 3 games' time. A lot needs to be looked at from game plans to players. Yeah, I think, yeah, as you said about Tamari, I said in my review, as soon as Chanel's back, you swap those two because we're not going to have Metcalf for still a bit of time, but that's the other change I would make once you're able. But my question for you, it's been a dreadful month as a Warriors fan, mate, but taking a step back and putting it all on the line, have you given up hope that the Warriors will be finals bound, or do you think they can still turn things around?
it has been a bad month. I think back to the week we put a score on the Rabbitohs and everyone was talking premiership windows being open. Well, I feel like they've been shut now, and my expectations have been brought back down according to our results and just what we're putting out on the paddock. So now over the next couple of weeks, if we see a couple losses, probably won't take it as hard because it'll be expected. This next month is going to be the big. It's going to tell a lot. We're playing the Roosters and the Panthers. If we
And the
manage
Dolphins.
to, and the Dolphins, yeah, we managed to pick up a big result over one of those, Roosters or Panthers. That'll do a lot for our confidence and maybe the fan base's confidence that we can still turn it around. But we drop those two, and then maybe another one or two of the games following that, and then it's starting to look pretty bleak, I think, in terms of finishing in the top 8. We're still only the third of the way through the season, like you said, so anything can happen. But the more games we drop in the coming weeks, the more seismic our end to the season has to be for us to make it. It's probably something similar to what the Knights did last year, where they went 10 in a row.
So at the moment, we're 2 wins off the top 8. The next sort of third of the season is Roosters, Panthers, Dolphins. So three top of the half, 3 top 8 teams. Cowboys, Storm, a top 8 team. Titans, Broncos, a top 8 team. Bulldogs, officially a top 8 team. So Cowboys, Titans, Bulldogs are kind of the only ones out of the next 8 games that you consider to be ones I guess you put down as ones you should win rather than can win.
Yeah, we've already been beaten by the Titans.
We've already been beaten by teams that we should beat the past 3 weeks. So, yeah, and we're going to have to cash in during Origin period as well.
Yeah.
A lot has to go our way now.
You guys are so negative. Yeah, Jacko even said we can sneak into the top 8 with some luck, but forget about being real contenders. I putting my balls on the line, man. We're making the 8. We're not making the 4 anymore, like I thought we might. We're going to make the 8. We'll get there. I've got confidence. It's just a few minor tweaks, and everything will magically work. Again, fully on my Warriors optimism high.
I hope so. I just hope the wagon doesn't start falling off and the
Oh,
movement slows down.
I already said that to a guy at work today, mate. He was asking us like, give it a couple of weeks. If they keep playing like this, it'll be back to like the good old days, mate, where there was you, me, and three other people in the stadium.
Well, that's exactly right. You and
Yeah,
people like you and I will always be there no matter what. But the swell behind the boys, it will it will go down.
yeah. Um, but yeah, there needs to be change. We discussed it with Ruin Hammer backstage. I think I was talking about it where we haven't seen Webster make changes due to form before, and it's not something he's encountered yet. He kind of sticks with his players and only changes them if there's injuries. And it's time for him. He needs to sit there and go, something's not working. We've got to address it. We haven't seen the addressing part yet. So if they do that, as Jacko said at the buy round, if they adjust and adapt, I think they have a hope. If they keep playing the way they are now, then yeah, I would have to join you guys on that other side. But yeah, we'll move on to the Warriors Roosters lineup. So if you want to give me that predictable Warriors team.
Okay, so CNK at the back. On the wings, Dallin Martinez-Lesniak, Marcelo Montoya. In the centres, Rocco Berry, Roger Tuivasa-Sheck. In the halves, Te Martin, Sean Johnson. Front row, Adam Fanua-Blake, Bunty Arfour, Wade Egan. The edge-back roles this week, Jackson Ford and Mitch Barnett has moved to the second row. Tohu Harris, lock and captain. Interchange, Dylan Walker, Tom Arlett, Jazz Tavanga makes a return, and Adam Pompey on the bench, not sure why. Doesn't see many minutes from there. That's how it is as named yesterday afternoon. We'll see about that.
Yeah, so before we discuss the Roosters, so what's your take on that piss poor job of a lineup that Andrew Webster has delivered us again?
Don't understand Pompey on the bench if he's not going to get used. It's an absolute waste of a bench spot. We're playing one man at a one-man disadvantage the past few weeks. I don't get it. We could bring Zion in. What's the harm if you're not going to play Pompey? Have that potential to bring on a firebrand to swing some momentum.
Yeah, well, you go back to that night's game. You imagine Zion coming on when it was like to and fro, a bit of impact could have changed things. And there was Webster was on Sens today, and he was asked about the Pompey last week, and he basically said he's got Pompey on the bench in case the back gets injured. Which we're not rugby union. That's not what you do. You've got a guy like Dylan Walker.
I thought that's what Dylan Walker's there for.
Yeah. If you lose a centre, you can put Dylan Walker at centre. You lose a winger, you put Dylan Walker at centre, and you move Roger to the wing. I know I'm not a coach, obviously, but that just seems straightforward to me. I'd add another forward, especially when we're about to discuss what is an extremely large pack, both starting and bench for the Roosters. You need more props or more forwards in your rotation. I would bring Zion in because Jazz can play in the second row if you needed a second rower there instead of being a middle, where Zion can just be that middle. Jacko said Lussick might be a late change. Yeah, Lussick could be brought in to be the cover, but then that's again a guy that won't get used. Jacob Laban could make it to replace Pompey, but I don't see the point in Pompey being there just to be used if a back gets injured, because I think that's silly. If you're going to have him there, have him in the starting team and move it around that way. But yeah, not what I would pick. And it's it's kind of becoming a joke in the Standoff and Ruin Hammer chat. Every Tuesday night, there's Brad having a meltdown about the team. I'm not happy.
I'm looking at the Roosters interchange. I could look at any team's interchange across the other the other 16 teams in the comp, and I guarantee you that there's not someone on their bench that's not going to make it on the field.
Yeah. And Jacko said Zion didn't have a great game. He made 3 basic errors last week. Yeah, it wasn't the best, but he still churned out some decent running meters. But yeah, a few errors. That's something he needs to work on. But how many players in the first grade side at the moment need to work on the errors? But yeah, we'll go on to the Roosters now. Pretty stacked team. So James Tedesco at fullback. Dominic Young and Daniel Tupou on the wings, Joseph Suoli'i and Joseph Manu in the centres, Luke Keary and Sam Walker in the halves, Jared Waerea-Hargreaves in his 300th, in the front row with Brandon Smith and Lindsay Collins. Second row is Angus Crichton and Nat Butcher, and then 13 is Victor Radley. And then on the bench, we've got Connor Watson, Naiafumu White, Spencer Leniu in his first game back from his suspension, and Terrell May on the bench as well. That 17 is terrifying, if I'm being completely honest. Fullbacks playing out of his skin. Those wingers are always dangerous. Centers are crazy. Halves are a decent combination. Front row, very scary. Second row, just as scary. And Victor Radley's always a threat. And then, Terrell May's been one of the better forwards running around this year. Spencer Leniu is going to be looking to make up for lost time. White's been impressive, and Connor Watson's been playing really well. It's scary. This game could be a cricket score, if I'm going to be honest. I was positive. I told you already. I was positive in my review and said the Roosters would only win by 20. So I've gone with the Roosters in this game. Who did you pick?
This is the first time this season, I think, I'm tipping against the Warriors.
It is for me too. Oh, I think I might have picked against them at the Storm game, maybe.
No, I think I tipped us. I'll have to watch it back, but I'm pretty sure I tipped us.
Mm.
Yeah.
So you gone Roosters as well?
Gone Roosters. I'd love to be proven wrong. Surely there's only way up from where we've been. It just depends whether or not that's enough to beat the Roosters.
Yeah. So, it could be a depressing Sunday, but we'll move on to the rest of the round and quickly give our thoughts. So, coming up first on Thursday night, we've got the Dolphins and Manly. I've gone with the Dolphins.
I've actually gone Manly here. Manly has sort of been a bit win-loss. They lost last week. I think they'll come out with a point to prove.
Yeah, I've just gone Dolphins. I think they're on a bit of a roll and it's at home. And Manly, I'm not confident on what Manly's going to show up. So it's a tight one. A lot of tight ones in this. First one on Friday though probably won't be tight. Panthers versus Bulldogs. I've gone Panthers.
Yeah, Panthers.
And second game on Friday, Eels Broncos. I've gone Broncos. I know Reynolds isn't playing. But they've got those other guys, and for the Eels, they got no Gutho, got no Moses.
Yeah. I'm sticking with Broncos as well.
Yeah. First game on Saturday, we got Tigers and Knights. I've gone with the Knights. I know I said Tigers next win's just around the corner, but I think the Knights will do it here.
I'm going for Tigers on that one.
Ooh.
Yeah.
I was tempted. Next game. Dragons versus the Rabbits. I have gone with the Rabbits. It's the Rabbits' time to shine, and I don't pick the Dragons. I don't pick the Dragons, mate, regardless of who they're playing.
No Cam Murray.
Yeah, but it's the Dragons.
It doesn't stop with Cam Murray. They've lost a few.
Mm.
I've got the Dragons.
Yeah, I'm sticking with my guns. I can't pick the Dragons. It'll cost me. It'll cost me the tipping comp, I know, but... Last game on Saturday, Melbourne versus Sharks. I have gone with Melbourne, which I may change, but I'm going to say I'm sticking with Melbourne.
Hey, you can't change it. What are you going? What are you submitting for the tips?
Bugger it. I'm going Melbourne at home.
Ooh, I'm going Sharks.
I still don't. I still think the Sharks are show ponies, mate. I think they're going to get shown up.
Think of the injuries.
I know. That was the only reason why I might change. But no, I'll stick with my guns. I'm going with Storm.
All right. I'll go on Sharks.
Injuries and also the fact that the Storm have only once won a game by more than 10 points, by 10 or more points. All their wins would be 8-4, 2-2, 6-2, and then that 34 pointer against Souths. But otherwise,
if they win by one, Paul, I still get it right.
They have won. Yep, I know, but they're not the convincing team they've been in the past.
Yeah. Then first game on Sundays, Roosters Warriors, which would both pick the Roosters. Then the final game is Titans Cowboys. I've gone with the Cowboys. I was tempted with Titans, but with no Tanner Boyd, I have to go Cowboys.
Oh, so torn on this one. Give me Titans. I'll go the other way from you.
No Tanner Boyd, mate.
No Tanner Boyd, no worries.
Yeah. So we'll probably see you jump me in the ladder.
This is the smallest multi we have ever had. I think with just 3 games. Is there the chance we could actually win a multi with only 3 games?
Probably still fluff it.
Yeah, we'll fluff it in the first one. You watch, like we do every week. So that is the NRL. So we'll move on to Super League quickly before I let everyone go for the day. It's actually a really interesting ladder. I know Jacko wants to jump out quickly, but it's an interesting ladder in the Super League right now, mate. I don't know if you've seen it, but all top 6 teams are all on 14 points. So the top 6. So we've got Wigan first, Warrington second, St. Helens third, Hull KR fourth, Catalans fifth, and Salford 6th. So all on 14 points. Then 7th and 8th are only a few points behind. So there could be big movement in the next few weeks. I haven't seen a ladder that close.
That's crazy.
I think 7th, I didn't write down who 7th was, but 7th are on 12 points and then 8th are on 10. So it's like a win out. And London now sit with a 0-10 record at bottom of the ladder. So still no change for them. But yeah, the results. Wigan defeated Catalans 30-8. Salford defeated Huddersfield 18-16. Leeds defeated London 46-8. So there we go. Paul's brought up the ladder. So it's crazy. Warrington defeated Hull FC 24-6. Hull KR defeated St. Helens 40-12. And then Lee and Castleford had a 28-all draw. So, yeah. And Simon said from his knowledge, Salford is a Category B club. That'll be good for them if they can make it in the top 6. It might help them increase the category. Yeah, I don't understand any of that stuff. But all I see is my team's at the top, so I'm happy. But yeah, it's crazy to see everyone that close. You imagine if the NRL was like that, where you had like the top 6 teams all on the exact same points.
Yeah, that's crazy.
But yeah, round 11 is coming up this week. We've got Warrington versus Hull KR, Castleford versus St. Helens, Lee versus Salford, Huddersfield versus Wigan, Catalans versus Leeds, and London versus Hull FC. So I feel like London's going to be 0-11. But I'm looking forward to that inevitable time like we had last year where that poor team at the bottom finally gets their first win and we can celebrate. Anything else either of you want to add before we let everyone go?
I asked last week. I asked on everybody to remember what they did the last time the Warriors won and do what you did that day. I don't think anyone did it. So if you could do it this week, please. It's getting desperate.
Yeah, and Simon said it'd take too long to explain the category thing, but I'll let you know Wigan's a Category A club and they cannot be relegated at all. Same with Catalan and St. Helens. I do remember us discussing that last year about there were certain clubs that were marked, even if they were dead last, they wouldn't get relegated due to their category. So I do remember that. Thanks, Simon. So yeah, ladies and gentlemen, thank you for joining us tonight on the Standoff with Brad and Richie. For your weekly update on all things rugby league, tune into our show next week at 8 p.m. on Facebook or YouTube, or at your convenience on iHeartRadio or Spotify. Just remember to search for New Zealand Sport Radio. Cheers again for joining me, Richie, and thanks, Paul, for your help in the background. And good night, everyone.